and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, greetings. My name is David McGrath, and I am the pastor at York United Methodist Church, and it is an honor and a privilege to once again participate in our Memorial Day service. It is good for us to have a holiday that reminds us that the freedoms that we enjoy today have been earned for us by others. On Memorial Day, we remember those who wore our military uniforms representing our country, those who gave the ultimate sacrifice of their lives in protecting those freedoms. As Americans, we enjoy a certain amount of freedom and quality of life that others in the world simply do not have. And that freedom and that quality of life didn't just happen. It was earned for us by others. Wars had to be fought and blood had to be shed. And just in case we forget that, there are some war memorials that remind us about the price that had to be paid. If you have been to Washington, D.C., I'm sure that you took some time to visit some of those monuments and memorials there. It is a moving experience to visit those sites and those landmarks. Those memorials are there to help us to not forget that our country is here because of what other people did. And so celebrating Memorial Day, we are called to remember people who have fought the good fight, people who were good soldiers of the faith, people who have been loved and missed. Memorial Day is about remembering people. It's about people remembering people. And I'm reminded of the Apostle Paul's second letter to Timothy when I think about people remembering people. Right there at the beginning of chapter 1, verses 3 through 5, we find Paul remembering his friend. Verse 3 says, I constantly remember you in my prayers. Verse 4 says, recalling your tears, I long to see you. And then verse 5 says, I have been reminded of your sincere faith. He also remembers those who paved the way for Timothy. Paul remembered Timothy in several ways. He remembered him enough to pray for him. He remembered Timothy's pain in recalling his tears, and he remembered that Timothy was a man of commitment, loyalty, and faith. Timothy was important to Paul, and so we need to remember that people matter, that people are important to us. At the end of the day, we realize that relationships are what matter to us. You know, at a funeral service, there was a sentence written on one of those memorial cards that you get when you first arrive, and it said, say goodbye to me, but not to the thought of me. We all want to be remembered. And so this Memorial Day, we look back and we remember those who have gone on before us, those who have passed on before us, veterans who have given their lives to protect our freedoms. And we also this weekend remember with love and compassion, those family members and those friends who have also passed on before us. You know, originally Memorial Day was instituted to remember those who died in the Civil War, but over the years it has become a time to remember all of our veterans who have sacrificed their lives to protect our freedoms. And then even throughout the years it has been a time to remember those loved ones who have passed on before us. You know, Memorial Day used to be called Decoration Day. And it was called that because many people would go to the grave sites of their loved ones, and decorate them as a sign that they have not been forgotten, those who are no longer here. Memorial Day is a time for us to look back and to remember those who are no longer with us, especially those who have provided the ultimate sacrifice in protection of our country and our country's freedoms. Memorial Day is indeed a time to look back and to remember those who passed on, but it's also an opportunity for us to take some time and to look around and like Paul, to remember those who are important to us today, who are still living. Memorial Day weekend is often a time when we like to gather with friends and with family to enjoy time together. And I think during this pandemic separation, we have been reminded of the importance of those relationships and of our freedoms. Memorial Day is a time when we remember a very sobering fact that freedom doesn't come for free. The cost of our liberty is the shed blood of others on our behalf. And so each year we observe Memorial Day and we remember those who have paved the way before us. And so today we do look back and we do remember with honor, and we give thanks for those who have died for the sake of our country and for our freedoms. Today we also look around and we remember all of those we love. And again, we give thanks. We give thanks for friends and for family members. Today we also look up. We look up and we give thanks to God who sees us through all these things.
As they strive for justice and peace, those who work each day to protect us, come stand with the brave. Come stand with the brave who fight for freedom on these shores and far across the seas, those who pledge their lives to protect us, come stand with the brave. Their courage strengthens us, their service teaches us, and we are humbled by the sacrifice they give. Come stand with the brave who've gone before us, facing foes and dangers unknown. Those who gave their all to
Hello, I'm Ruth Brintnall, a longtime York Township resident, and even though we're not able to be together for the Memorial Day Parade this year, we will all be thinking of the meaning of Memorial Day. I remember when the original committee that planned this parade decided they weren't able to continue. I said to my husband, Don, we can't let this happen. It's the only thing the township does together. So 50 or so years ago, he and Buzz Cormany, John Evan, Jim B. Shire, Willard Barco, and others from York Church, together with the York Township trustees, formed a new committee, and I'm thankful for the community's support that still continues today. The parade kicked off at York Church, and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H, Sunday school children and youth, Sheriff's Mounted Units, the Earhart Fire and Rescue, Old Phoenix National Bank Stagecoach, and classic cars with honored guests, decorated bikes, wagons, and strollers all marched to the cadence of the Buckeye Junior High Band as community members lined the parade route to York Cemetery. The honor girl and escort placed flowers on the Veterans Memorial at the Town Hall and at the flagpole at the cemetery, following the flag raising by Scouts. The roster of township veterans was read, and honored speakers voiced messages of sacrifice for our freedoms. The VFW provided a gun salute. The band performed and taps were played while children placed flowers donated by Barco's Greenhouse on the veterans' grave sites to honor the men and women who helped defend our country. The parade now ends back at the York Township Park with refreshments by the fire department and the York Historical Society. We may not march this year, but we will remember the reasons for Memorial Day in our hearts and in our prayers.
Soldiers of World War II. Clyde Crum, Malin Culp, Arthur Lane, Gerald Voorhis, Robert Walling, James Lyon, Woodrow Bright, Richard Lyon, Vernon Daniels, George Staton, Ralph Mills, Bernard Wilson, Herbert Sumney, Ernest Sanzislo, Ezra Hayes, Guy Penrose, James Dunkel, Philip Schwartz, Calvin Kemp, Ralph Yeager, Claude Timmons, Harold Mills, Carl Topper, Fred Stanko, Henry Nipple, Dorothy Yoder, George Pappenhausen, Ralph Legg, Thomas Cooperthwaite, Howard Spice, Frank Demchek, Raymond Hubler, Elmer Walden, William Miles Baker, Stuart F. Faunce, Raymond E. Hewitt, Herbert Wurstel, Dale Hathaway, John M. Maresh, Michael L. Barron, Letha Failer, William Taft Adams, Willis Tucker, Richard Schell, James Farley, Frank McCloskey, Ivan A. Smith, Lester Potts, Alice Potts, Henry Northey, Richard Mole, Leonard Parfit, Dale Mann, Byron Yoder, Lawrence Beck, Farron D. Irish, W. B. Wolfe, Lawrence Gellis, Samuel Olds, Benjamin Schipferling, Thomas P. Stieber, Ernest Paul, Frank A. Smith, William Bill Davis, Kenneth Meeks, William Elsie Skaggs, Joseph Lenarth, Ira Porterfield, Virgil Justice, George Christian, Larry Lee Adams, Joseph Drasney, Crellin Hopkins Sr., Norman Hettinger, Ralph White, Louis Stevens, John Walden, William Zweifel, Robert C. Wagner, Ray Norris, Ernest Kazian, Elliot Mann, Bert Keneally, Everett E. Adams, Curtis Adelbert Coleman, Deaver Wood, Dwayne Nafsker, Paul E. Lyons, Marilyn Nafsker, William Bettner, William Spieth Walter, Harold Yeager, Irvin Seeley, Kenneth D. Alexander, Leslie V. Stallmaker, Paul Birch, James Menley, Hobart Kearns, Charles Williams, Homer Newcomer, Eugene Bowers, James L. Johnson, Raymond Hubler, Paul Steingass, Earl Feist, William Strittmatter, Joseph Wittenhaffer, Clyde Lettner, Arthur Schwartz, Charles Rettig, James L. Johnson, Ulysses E. Simpson, Charles J. Lance, Howard Daughtry, Gloria Leeworthy, Burton D. Donahue, George H. Ellswick, Charles Wagner, Clarence Schmeidel, Joseph Frank Bova, Virgil L. Justice, Frank C. Ehrman, Steve Dyna, Charles Buzz Cormany. Soldiers from World War II buried in Ohio Western Reserve National Cemetery: Emil Evan, Francis Evan, Mike Trelenick. Soldiers of the Korean War: Bobby Lettner, Louis Mellert, William T. Wolfe, Chelsea Bales, Richard Hendrickson, William E. McDonnell, Frank Peltka, William Carver, Robert Moskal, Van Miller, George Smith, Ralph Kissamore, Richard Court, John Donaeus, James Massey, Emil Helmers, Fred Timko, Ernest Sanzislo, Chas D. Hewitt, W. B. Wolfe, Richard Bowers. Soldiers of the Vietnamese conflict: Jack Hatfield, Donald Wolfe, Roger Adams, Robert Aycock, Eli Purvin, Peter L. Green, Frank Schmidt, Charles Richard Pendleton, Daniel Boys, Donald Beard, Earl Kanzig, Roger Kemp, Ronald Hamilton, Larry Lee Adams, Raymond Pritchard. Soldiers of the Army of Occupation in Germany: Clifford Graham. Soldiers of Special Services: Ronald Hamilton. Soldiers of Cold War and Peacetime Service: David Cummings Jr., Nick Martin, Thomas Huber, David A. Russ, Don Daig, Jack Dingus, Donald Brintnall, William Lutton, Edward Frombaugh, Franklin Erman, Dwight Simpson, Ralph F. Bishop, Daniel Schneider, Ellen Mellert. Soldiers of Desert Storm: Sandra Kress,